Walk through any city on a night that drops below freezing and look carefully at the doorways. Not quickly. Carefully. You will see people sleeping in configurations that professional survival instructors have never taught in a single course, using materials that cost nothing, maintaining core temperatures that should be physically impossible given what they have. No gear, no ratings, no fill power, no technical shell fabric. Alive and functional in the morning, packing up methodically and moving on, because they learned something that the survival industry has no financial incentive to teach you. They learned that heat is not something you generate. It is something you keep. The modern heating product market is built on a single assumption it never states out loud. That assumption is that your body is inadequate, that without intervention, without the right fuel, the right equipment, the right rated system purchased at the right price point, you will fail in the cold. This is not a safety message. It is a market positioning strategy. Your body produces between 80 and 100 watts of continuous thermal energy at rest. That is a 100-watt bulb running all night inside your clothing. The question was never whether you produce enough heat. The question was always whether you're throwing it away faster than you make it. The Bedouin of the Sahara wore layered wool robes in temperatures that swung 60 degrees between midday and midnight, using the same garment to block heat in the afternoon and trap it at night. A single material solution that outlasted every technical alternative by 4,000 years. The Norse people of the early medieval period built sleeping platforms raised precisely 12 inches off the floor inside their longhouses, a height that cleared the cold air pooling layer at ground level while staying below the smoke layer near the rafters, a thermal sweet spot identified empirically and maintained structurally for centuries. Indigenous peoples of the Patagonian coast, whom Darwin famously underestimated on his voyage, slept naked in near-freezing temperatures under guanaco hide, having developed physiological and behavioral cold adaptation techniques that modern researchers have since documented as genuinely extending survivable temperature range by 15 degrees below what acclimatized Western subjects can tolerate. Léon Théramin, working in a Soviet research facility in the 1930s, documented the thermal insulation properties of layered newspaper and found that 4 layers of broadsheet paper outperformed a single layer of wool felt of equivalent thickness in still air conditions, a finding that disappeared from popular knowledge the moment the post-war consumer economy needed to sell you something with a brand name instead. The knowledge was not disproven. It was simply not profitable to repeat. You have seen this your whole life and just never connected the dots. A coffee cup with a cardboard sleeve stays warm twice as long as one without, not because the cardboard generates heat, but because it breaks the conductive chain between your hot liquid and the cold air. A cat curled into a ball conserves more heat than a cat stretched flat, not because it produces more heat in that position, but because it reduces the surface area through which heat escapes. Every single technique in this list is that cardboard sleeve. Every one of them reduces the surface, closes the gap, breaks the chain. The heat was always enough. The exits were always the problem. Here's what you need. I want to be honest with you about every number. Newspaper, free from any recycling bin or library. Contractor garbage bags, $1 each, and you want several. Aluminum foil, $1.50 per roll. Duct tape or any tape, $2. Plastic bags of any kind, free. Paracord or any cord, free if you have any around. A cardboard box, free everywhere. A candle or two, optional. Hand warmers from the dollar section, optional. Everything else on this list costs nothing because it uses your own body, your own clothing, your own positioning, your own behavior. Total maximum cost, under $5. That is genuinely it. Here's the one thing most people get wrong when they try to use free materials for warmth. They think volume equals insulation. They pile on more newspaper, more bags, more layers, and they do it without air gaps. The result is a dense compressed mass that conducts heat almost as efficiently as nothing at all. Failure looks like this. Someone wrapped in 6 layers of newspaper so tightly it crinkles flat against their skin, shivering at 3 a.m, confused about why it isn't working. Success looks like newspaper that rustles when you move because the layers are loose enough to trap air between them. The newspaper is not the insulator. The air between the sheets of newspaper is the insulator. Every technique here works by the same mechanism. Create air gaps, protect them from wind, and stop the ground from stealing everything you built. Stuff newspaper loosely inside your shirt against your chest and abdomen before you sleep. Not folded flat, crumpled loosely so it holds its own shape and creates air pockets. The crumple is the technique. Flat newspaper compresses under your clothing and does very little. Crumpled newspaper maintains a structural air layer against your skin that your body charges with warmth within minutes. This is not improvised. Arctic researchers have tested it. The thermal value of crumpled newsprint against skin in still air conditions rivals thin synthetic insulation at a fraction of the weight and a cost of $0. Put a plastic bag over each sock before putting your second sock on. The bag breaks moisture transfer between your inner sock and outer sock, keeps your inner sock dry through the night, and adds a thin vapor barrier at the foot. the body part that loses heat to the ground fastest during sleep and to wet conditions fastest during movement. Dry feet in cold conditions is not comfort. It is a survival variable. Sleep on your side, not your back, and draw your knees toward your chest until your body forms a loose C shape. This position reduces the surface area of your body that is exposed to cold air by approximately 30% compared to lying flat on your back with limbs extended. 30% less surface area means 30% less radiant and convective heat loss from the same body, generating the same heat. The position costs nothing. It requires no materials. It simply exploits the same geometry a sleeping cat uses by instinct. Fill a garbage bag with dry leaves, grass, or crumpled newspaper and sleep on top of it, rather than directly on the ground. The bag contains the material and prevents moisture wicking from the ground into your insulation. The material itself, leaves, grass, paper, is dead air space in structural form. A garbage bag stuffed full and placed under your hips and lower back addresses the two highest heat loss contact points in a ground sleep position. Your hips and lower back bear the most direct pressure against the ground, and they lose heat fastest. Elevate them first. Wrap your head in a dry shirt or any fabric before sleeping, and leave only your nose and mouth exposed. The head and neck combined account for a disproportionate share of total body heat loss relative to their surface area because they are almost never insulated in improvised sleep systems. People cover their bodies and leave their heads uncovered and then wonder why they are cold. The thermal loss from an uncovered head on a 30-degree night is not trivial. It is the reason you wake up cold despite being warm everywhere else. Tuck your hands into your armpits rather than keeping them at your sides during sleep. The armpit is one of the warmest external body locations because of the dense vascular network near the surface there. Hands placed against the armpit are simultaneously warming the hands and using the body's own heat reservoir rather than leaving the hands as exposed radiating surfaces losing heat into cold air. This is reflexive for people who sleep in cold regularly. Make it deliberate. Breathe through a layer of fabric across your nose and mouth. Every exhaled breath carries heat and moisture. When that breath exits directly into cold air, both are lost. When it exits through a fabric layer, the heat transfers partly into the fabric and partly back toward your face on the next inhale. The fabric warms. Your inhaled air is pre-warmed by the fabric. The moisture accumulates in the fabric rather than condensing on the cold air and chilling your face. A bandana, a t-shirt hem, a cut section of sleeve. Any fabric across the breathing zone reduces respiratory heat loss meaningfully. Find a windbreak before you look for anything else. A dumpster, a low wall, a dense hedge, the corner formed by two walls meeting. Wind velocity doubles your convective heat loss, and no amount of insulation fully compensates for sustained wind exposure. 2 minutes spent finding a wind-sheltered location before you set up your sleep system is worth more than 20 minutes spent adding insulation layers in an exposed position. Wind first, everything else second. Use a garbage bag as a vapor shell over your entire sleep bundle. Pull it up from the feet and tie it loosely at the chest level, leaving your head out. The bag traps a bubble of warm, humid air around your body, prevents wind from stripping your convective boundary layer, and blocks ground moisture from wicking upward into your insulation through the night. It is loud when you move. That is irrelevant. It is one of the most effective single additions to any improvised sleep system available for $1. Put cardboard under every contact point with the ground, not just under your sleeping position, but extending a foot beyond it on all sides. The area just beyond your body is where cold air pools and creates a gradient that draws heat outward from your insulation edges. Extending the cardboard floor beyond the sleep zone reduces this edge effect and makes the entire ground layer perform more uniformly. Identify thermal mass around you and use it. A concrete wall that received direct sunlight during the day holds residual heat for hours after dark. Stone, brick, and concrete have high thermal mass. They absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. A wall that faced south all afternoon is still radiating warmth at 10 in the evening. Sleep against it, not away from it. The wall is a passive heater that requires nothing from you. Wear every layer you own in the correct order. The innermost layer should be the tightest and most moisture-wicking if you have that option. The outermost layer should be the most wind-resistant. The insulating layers in the middle should be loose enough to trap air between them. When people wear their warmest garment as the innermost layer and their thinnest as the outer, they have inverted the system and it performs at a fraction of its capability. Keep your collar closed at the neck at all times in cold conditions. The neck is a major heat exit point because warm air rises from your core and vents out through the collar continuously. A closed collar traps that rising warm air inside your clothing and forces it to circulate back down towards your core before exiting. An open collar lets it escape directly. The difference in felt temperature between an open and closed collar and moving cold air is not subtle. Eat before you sleep if you have any food available. Digestion generates metabolic heat. A body that has food to process is producing more heat than a fasted body for the 3 to 4 hours following a meal. In cold survival conditions, eating before sleep is not about nutrition timing, it is about thermogenesis. The calories become heat at exactly the time you need it most. Urinate before you sleep, and do not ignore the urge during the night. A full bladder forces your body to expend energy keeping that fluid at core temperature. The thermal cost of maintaining a full bladder of cold fluid in a cold body is not zero. Emptying it before sleep is a free caloric saving that your body redirects to core warming. Cold weather military training teaches this explicitly. The civilian survival community almost never mentions it. Double bag your feet entirely. One bag over the bare foot, one sock over that, one bag over the sock, one sock over that if you have it. The alternating sock bag system creates trapped air layers at every interface and provides vapor barriers between each insulating layer. The outer bag prevents external moisture from reaching the insulation. The inner bag prevents perspiration moisture from migrating outward and compromising the middle sock layer. The sock in between is the insulator. The bags are the barriers. Dry insulation in the middle is the result. Use your body heat to pre-warm your sleep space before committing to it. If you have a container, a sleeping bag, a blanket bundle, a large garbage bag, climb partway into it for 5 minutes before your full entry. Your body begins heating the air volume immediately. A pre-warmed sleep space feels dramatically different from a cold entry sleep space, and the warmth you deposited in those 5 minutes is waiting for you when you enter fully. Find elevation within any shelter. Warm air rises. In any enclosed space, a doorway, parking structure, an underpass, the air at 3 feet off the ground is meaningfully warmer than the air at ground level. A raised sleeping position using any available platform, a bench, a low wall, a pallet, a stack of flattened cardboard, captures this gradient. 12 inches of elevation in a sheltered space makes a real temperature difference. Use your exhaled breath deliberately. In extreme cold, cupping your hands over your face briefly and exhaling into them warms your hands. Using heat and moisture your body was going to expend anyway. It costs nothing. The warmth in your exhaled breath is real metabolic heat leaving your body. Intercept it before it disappears into the cold air. Insulate the gap between your hat and your collar by wrapping any available fabric, a shirt, a scarf, a grocery bag, around your neck and the lower portion of your head. This gap is where most hat-based insulation fails because the hat covers the top of the head and the collar covers the upper chest, and the inch of exposed neck between them is an open thermal chimney. Close the chimney. Move before you sleep if you have been cold and sedentary. 10 minutes of brisk movement, walking, push-ups, any sustained physical activity raises your core temperature and charges your body's thermal mass before you enter your sleep system. The warmth you generate in those 10 minutes stays with you for 1 to 2 hours after you stop moving. Use it. Sleep warm from the start rather than trying to warm up from a cold baseline inside your sleep system. One person who applies all of these techniques together in a sheltered location with basic free materials, newspaper bags, cardboard, can maintain survivable and genuinely comfortable core temperatures in exterior conditions down to the mid-20s Fahrenheit. 2 people sharing a sleep space double the heat generation for the same enclosed volume, and the math compounds immediately. A family or a small group using collective body heat in a fully insulated improvised shelter with ground barriers, vapor shells, wind protection, head covering, and the layered air gap principle applied throughout generates a thermal environment that commercial gear rated for the same temperature would cost $500 to replicate. The atmosphere itself holds roughly 37 million billion gallons of water vapor at any given moment. More latent thermal energy than every furnace running on Earth combined. Just sitting there in the air, around every person who has ever been cold, without understanding what they were surrounded by. The energy was never the problem. The knowledge was, no bills, no infrastructure, no asking anyone's permission. There is one honest condition where these techniques face their hardest test. In sustained wet cold, temperatures between 32 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit combined with rain or snow, the vapor management techniques become critical and the consequences of failure accelerate. Wet cold at 38 degrees is more dangerous than dry cold at 15 degrees because water conducts heat away from the body 700 times faster than still air, and at 38 degrees there is no freezing to signal the problem. You feel progressively less cold as hypothermia advances. The newspaper stays dry only as long as the outer vapor barrier holds. The garbage bag shell is not optional in wet cold. It is the entire system. In rain, find hard overhead cover before anything else. Without it, the vapor barrier is by hours, not a full night. Somewhere in the Patagonian coast that Darwin crossed in 1832, the people he observed sleeping comfortably in conditions that astonished him had understood for 10,000 years what he had not. That the body is not inadequate. That the cold is not unconquerable. That the gap between freezing and surviving was always filled with knowledge, never with money. What every person you pass in a winter doorway carries is that knowledge. built from necessity, refined by repetition, shared without profit motive because profit was never part of the equation. I don't know what brought you here. It doesn't matter. It works either way.